A lot of people seem to really struggle with the European paddle style magazine release. And it wasn't until after I saw how some people were trying to use that magazine release that I finally understood why people dislike them so much. You see, I grew up shooting shotguns for sporting and hunting purposes, and it wasn't until I was almost out of college before I got interested in handguns and the more tactical side of things. So I didn't have a muscle memory for a thumb push button magazine release like is common on most handguns today. It seems like every time I watch a YouTube video on guns, people mention how they have huge colossus hands and all of these things, but I have very medium-sized hands. I can fit in a medium-sized glove. I don't have massive monster hands, and I don't have particularly long thumbs. So I really struggle with reaching a thumb magazine release like we have on this Beretta. A lot of you are probably familiar with the Beretta 90 series, and they used to have a very large hump, which some people did not like. You didn't have particularly large hands. This is a Vertec frame, so it is a lot slimmer, and this pretty much allows me to reach that magazine release without having to break my grip. But oftentimes I do have to break my grip, and I have to shift my hand over so that I can actually reach that magazine. Now that Beretta is not a bad offender in particular, which is why I own that gun. I really like the Vertec style frame. This is a older Beretta 92 FS, and I'll be having a video on this later on, as this gun is very sentimental to me and very special. But I have modified this gun. I've had it all refinished and reworked. I have the extended magazine release button here, and I have thin grips from Lock Grip, and still it is pretty difficult. I can just barely reach that magazine button. Now, since it is muscle memory for a lot of guys to use their thumb and they've never known any other way, I can see why you would hate a European magazine release. I have to break my grip, rotate it around, and then hit the paddle to actually drop the magazine. Fortunately, it's a lot easier than that. When you're done shooting, your index finger is already here at the trigger guard. Simply sweep it down and hit the paddle, and the magazine comes flying out. So here's a basic reload drill that you can practice, and this will work on any handgun, any rifle. I learned this in a course that I took, and it's been extremely useful. I've taught to other people. You need 2 magazines. In one magazine, you're going to put just 1 round, insert it into the gun, and then you're going to have 1 full magazine. You're going to retain that on body, in your pocket, whatever reload source. You're going to chamber that 1 round, and we're going to shoot. Slide locks back, drop that magazine, insert the new magazine, drop the slide, and shoot that round. Now you're going to put it on safed, take out that magazine, put that back in your reload source. You're going to take your empty magazine again, insert your empty magazine. Now keep in mind, you have 1 round in the chamber still. So take the safety off, shoot that round, slide locks back, insert our new magazine. You can continue doing this as many times as you'd like, but that way you're getting a ton of reps in. It's very easy. All you need is 2 magazines. If you have just 10 rounds of ammo, that's still a lot of reps. Now, because I and many of you watching are American, and this is 2025, we think that history started with the 1911 and it had a thumb magazine release. So that's just God's method, and anything else is wrong, right? But that's just really not how history wrote itself. And when we switched from revolvers to semi-autos, magazines were very scarce and very expensive. So old German police were issued a Walther with 2 9-round magazines of 32 ACP, and they had a very stiff, rugged holster. And if you were to have a thumb magazine release button on the side, there's a chance that that rigid leather could bump and accidentally eject the magazine, and then you would draw your weapon. The magazine might fall out, you'd only have 1 round in it. Nowadays, we have custom molded kydex for every single gun model on the market, and for lights and lasers and optics and everything else. And we have options to mold around whatever magazine release is on the gun. And that's just really not a concern for us anymore. Also, since you're retaining your magazine because you're only issued 2 of them, your hand is already at the very base of the gun. So it made sense to have the magazine release right there, pull out that magazine, insert the new magazine. Nowadays, I still think this is a really interesting subject, as a lot of gun models fall on one side of the spectrum or the complete opposite. So with Beretta, you used to have just a very simple round circular button, and it was very difficult to reach and required a little bit of force to depress. There's no chance you're going to accidentally hit that. And now standard on pretty much every Beretta 90 series is a extended magazine release, and you also see companies putting larger magazine releases, and there are some really crazy magazine releases on competition guns. And then on the flip side, there's guns like the SIG P365 that have a little tiny magazine button, and it has a bevel around it so that you don't accidentally press it. This doesn't just apply to handguns either. There are lots of rifles that also use some sort of a paddle magazine release. The manual of arms is a little bit different, but the HK G3, the MP5, the AK, they all have a paddle lever that you depress to extract the magazine and then insert the new magazine. And more you see everything adopting AR controls and going towards a button. At the same time, the paddle being near the trigger guard where your index finger already is makes so much sense. And you see a lot of companies like Radian that are now doing these ambi and extended bolt releases and bolt catches that kind of reach down into the trigger guard so that your trigger finger is doing more than just pulling the trigger. It has multiple jobs. It's kind of like wanting a sports car with a manual transmission. A lot of people that enjoy driving are going to seek out that manual transmission. They know that it's stronger, more engaging, and they're just going to have a lot more fun with it. But unfortunately, those same people know that it's a better value to buy a used car than a new car. Unfortunately, the marketing people sitting in corporate offices only look at the sales numbers for new vehicles. And when they see that manual transmissions just aren't selling like they used to be, then they just stop offering it and they make less and less of them until they just die out. And the same is true with the paddle magazine release. It's just misunderstood and people don't understand the benefit of faster magazine changes. You're going to hit that paddle every single time. And as you see, I kind of struggle with the thumb button where sometimes it drops the magazine, sometimes it doesn't. And you want something that works 100% of the time. But those sales numbers are telling. And even HK, which is known for having paddles on everything, started offering a variant of the VP9 a while back, the VP9-B, which has a thumb button, and then the CC9, which is a completely new design. It is only offered with this button style magazine release. There is no paddle. I would love to see them add a paddle. I would buy another gun if they ever made a paddle. Some people are really upset, but I also understand why they did it. Now I understand if you're someone with decades of shooting experience or your duty gun has a thumb button magazine release, that's just what you're used to. And you might already have a dozen guns that all have that magazine release, and you're just not gonna change now. Even if you understand that there are some benefits to having the paddle style magazine release, and you don't want to convert, you don't own any guns with this, that's completely fine. That's why there's so many different types of guns with different style controls so that there's something for everybody out. But let's say you have a USP or a Walther PPK in your collection and you've always just hated taking it out because you didn't like that magazine release and reloads were difficult for you. I really hope that this explanation helps. There's no right or wrong style, but if you are someone that has giant thumbs and you use that to hit your magazine release, I encourage you to try using your trigger finger. I know some people will also use their middle finger like that, but I would encourage you to try one of those methods. If you haven't heard this before and this is helpful, please let me know. And if you have any questions, please leave a comment.